Why are you not picking him? Shouting at the TV. Totally triggered.
It's great. I shouted at the fucking computer going, "Read the room, girl."
I know. Yeah. I just think that I would have got on a lot better in life if I had learned that lesson. So I was looking into how triggers work. And so it's to do with our neocortex, which controls us most of the time. That's where we have our prefrontal cortex is part of that. So that, like, I've written it down somewhere, I think, or maybe not. I think it's something like 80% of your brain is the neocortex, or at least half of it is the neocortex. So most of your brain, which controls your executive functioning, like planning, goal setting, actions, memory, perception, attention, thought, all of that is bypassed when you are triggered, and you're using the more primitive part of your brain, the amygdala, which is like it controls other things, but you hear the fight, flight, freeze response. So it's our natural way to protect us. So the trigger is setting off our survival mode. And so that's why we act irrationally. So it can be a really small thing. You'll know you're triggered because you will react in a way that is over the top for the situation. And often the more problematic trigger response is the anger or the anxiety.
Sorry, this isn't funny at all, but you're everything you're saying is me over the last few days, and I'm like, Jesus. Like, it's so intense. Everything you're saying is just like, oh my God, I got so angry over a bloody saucepan or a frying pan. Fuck's sake, like.
Absolutely. But it can also trigger sadness as well. So, like, I've got this really straight, and maybe I should explore it, but I have this. I was talking to you actually about Christmas movies, and this one called The Polar Express. I'm just talking about, and I'm not going to because I end up crying. Just talking, in the Polar Express is this little boy, and he's the boy that I've got to be careful saying this, my voice will start going, that Father Christmas forgot, basically. And there's also a song that an old Christmas song that plays. And when I hear it, it makes me cry, like proper weep. And I don't know what it is about it that sets me off, because I'm very fortunate. My family my mum is like Mrs. Christmas. You know, she's still, I'm 36, not 36, 46. I wish I was 36. I'm 46 on Christmas Eve, and my mum still makes me a stocking. So
that's lovely.
That's what my mum's like. She loves Christmas. She always makes a little stocking for me and my sister and my brother, and she makes them for my kids. And yeah, so I've been very fortunate, and I don't know if it's because I feel like I had a lot. So hearing somebody else doesn't, like a child not having that makes me
I watched the movie afterwards. Actually, it was beautiful. But I think that trigger is not necessarily anything to do with Christmas itself, and more to do with the poor little boy not being seen.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. You just said that, and then it's made me cry.
Oh, sorry.
That's what it is. It's the child not being seen. I was like, why? The kid's just been singing about Father Christmas not coming to his house, and then he's like, right, I'm going to choose a child to have the first present of Christmas, and they pick the main kid and not this. Like, you've let him down for years. Why are you not picking him? Shouting at the TV. Totally triggered.
Yeah.
But it's right. But I think you're right. I think it's about not being seen, and that is a wound of mine. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, because actually when I watched it afterwards, it kind of triggered in me that feeling as well, that child just seemed invisible to the whole world. And like ourselves that have, been through trauma, we can see that. We were outcasted as children. We were set to the side. And it's just like, why are we invisible and why is everyone else not? That's the kind of trigger I got from it anyway, personally.
Yeah. And it's just like he's singing I don't know if anyone's watched that. Please watch the Polar Express and see what you think, right? So they're singing a song on the train, and he's singing, and it's so sad what he's singing, and the little girl's going, yeah, it's the best time of the year, totally ignoring what he's
You
saying.
Jesus Christ, I shouted at the fucking fear going, read the room, girl.
I know. Oh, it's a family time. That's
Yeah,
it.
you're
Really
like,
doesn't have a
Jesus
family
Christ,
time.
she's so selfish. Like, you know, the poor boy's pouring his heart out. She's like, I got loads of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you know what? The first time I watched it, I thought that, and then when it was like, I'm going to choose the first present of Christmas, I was like, he's going to choose that boy because that's obviously the boy to choose. And then when he didn't, I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? And
So I
everyone
found
was
that
really
movie
happy
pretty
for the
triggering
kid.
anyway because I found it to be more of a thriller than a nice movie. You know, the train nearly crashed and they all nearly fucking died. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's quite. There's an element of darkness there
Yes,
in that,
there is,
isn't
and
it?
I was like, this is not a nice movie.
Yeah,
It's not a movie. It is a nice movie, but there's a bit in it where I was holding on to the seat going, jeez, the poor children, like.
yeah. Well, it's my youngest son's favorite film. I don't know why. Well, not now, but when he was younger, we used to watch the Polar Express a billion times, and that is, I've watched it so many times, and that bit of the song, and that him not getting chosen by Father Christmas every time still makes me cry, and I must have seen it hundreds of times. So you'd think I'd be desensitized by now, but not at all. And there's a song called "The Little Boy Who Santa Forgot" or something. It's a really old Christmas song, and that just gets me every time.
Well,
Makes me.
yeah, especially when he's singing it, you're like, oh, you really feel for him.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
Yeah. So that's
but
it.
that's it. Movies as well. Like, you know, there's certain times that I'd be guided to watch a movie, and I've seen it before. And, you know, I keep getting signs to watch it again. And this happened last year, last Christmas especially. And, you know, I'd be avoiding watching it or I wouldn't get time. And then I'd eventually watch it and it would just lead to an outburst of emotion. And I was like, this is why the universe wanted me to watch this. You know, so I would be triggered into feeling what I'm feeling right now. You know what I mean? And I could watch the movie 10 times before and never cried half as much. But the universe would guide me to watch it to get out the stuff. So, you know, the triggers they are your guides. They're brought there for a reason. We might think of triggers as negative, but they're our biggest teachers. They really are. You know, I'm grateful for my triggers. Obviously, I'm not happy to be crying or angry, but I'm happy to be understanding what I need to hear.
Yeah, and no matter how healed you are, there's always going to be triggers. There's always more work to do. As my sensei says, he's like, what is the biggest room in the world? And we have to say, the room for improvement. And that is true, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
it's an ongoing journey. So the triggers is great because it's showing you that there's a bit that you haven't yet explored. So it's like, get excited, get curious, and see it as a gift and
It
not
really
as
is.
a bad thing. But for
Exactly. Because
people that are new to triggers, like, what process could they go through to try and unpack what's happening there? Like, how should they know that they're being triggered? What should they do when they're being triggered to try and explore it? Have you got any tips?
well, for me personally, you know, obviously the anger and emotion that comes up, that's your trigger. So understand anytime that you do get emotional or triggered, there's a reason behind that. So when you do get, like, obviously sometimes we're busy, we don't get time straight away. But when you get the time, sit with that. And that's what I do. I sit with it in the evening and I'd be like, why was I triggered today? You know, I was with the saucepan or the frying pan and stuff. I actually sit with that afterwards. I was like, why am I so angry today? And it all just started to fall into place. And I looked back over the last few months of triggers and I was like, it's all making sense. I'm saying goodbye to my own reality, and that's a very hard thing for me to do. And that's why all my past emotions are coming up to resurface so that I can release them once and for all. So literally introspection. Spend some time with yourself and ask yourself, why do I feel this way? What is making me angry? What is the bigger picture here? Oh, bless you.
I've got a
So
bit of
yeah,
a cold coming on. Sorry.
you're But
Carry
yeah,
on.
what is the bigger picture? Ask yourself, where is this wound coming from? Where is this anger stemming from? You know, it's never ever the external. You know, but the external can have little snippets of guides to tell you what it's about. You know, well, for me personally, it's usually the opposite. I just get angry, and it's like there's something more here, and I
Yeah,
have to look into it. You know, because like no one really, unless you're aware, you're not going to understand that your anger over the Bluetooth or the fucking frying pan is deeper. You know, we just think we're getting frustrated because something's not working, but like that frustration has a core cause. You know what I mean? There is a core reason behind it. There really is, and it can be healed.
absolutely. So, some tips for if you are triggered or want to work on your triggers. So, if you haven't done work on your triggers before, and this is the beginning of your healing journey, there will be things that you'll know if you sit and think, what triggers me? What makes me go from 0 to 100? So in school, I did like a little series of photographs actually of one of my days that would have triggered me at various points of the day. So in the morning, I was running late and I was stuck in traffic. Now that would have made me angry. I would have got road rage at one time. I didn't, but that would have caused irrational anger. I mean, at the end of the day, I should have left the house earlier. So why am I getting angry with the traffic that's likely to be there? You know, so obviously something there needs to be explored deeper, like, or maybe just put a plan in place so I'm not in that situation again. And then the photocopier breaking, I would be like, oh, this is just typical, or how could somebody be so inconsiderate that they've just left it like this? But when you take a step back, the person who left it may have not left it like that. It might have jammed while it was finishing off a job, because sometimes teachers are busy, you know, or they might have run out of time and had another job to do. But I'm assuming the worst because it's an obstacle in my way. Yeah, so that feeling of injustice, I guess, or unfairness, that somebody would leave that. I wouldn't do that for someone else. I used to be a person that would often think, well, I wouldn't do that to someone else. Like, why has somebody done that? That's inconsiderate. And
But
then, oh, my
so
tips.
that's lack of awareness. If somebody, you know, if somebody's living in an unaware mentality, they may leave that copier like that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So
yeah.
even if a person did leave it like that, it's because of their lack of consciousness, really.
Yeah, but also, like, teachers are so busy. So often, like, you've got 10 minutes to do the job, and if it jams, and you know, you might not have time to undo it, and then you've got a class of 30 waiting for you.
That's
Um,
all very
so
true.
it's not necessarily that you know, they might have just had to go, oh no, abort ship. I'm going to have to not have that sheet that I need for my next lesson because I need to be in a classroom. So, and I know that in reality that's how it is. But at one time, I would see it as like somebody's shit on me, basically.
Yeah,
Like almost
you
like
would
they
have
did
been
it
an external
intentionally.
thing for your own for something that was probably not, you know, to be blamed externally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's it.
Taking it
That shows your
personally.
growth, though. You know, and I think you're being taught a lesson in patience here, because I know myself, when it comes to traffic jams or detours or anything like that, the universe is shouting at you just to slow down and just be
Yeah.
that little bit more patient and calmer.
Yeah, it doesn't really bother me now, to be honest. They were old. That's why I took photos, because like, this would have triggered me.
Yeah,
This would have triggered me. This would have triggered me. Yeah, but I think I'm much better at putting that space. I think I used to react not necessarily to the person, but get that unhelpful pattern of thoughts in my head that wouldn't make me feel great, would make me cross, and I wouldn't speak out as well. I was somebody who would try to be nice. So I wouldn't put someone else out, but I would be really resentful behind closed doors, which is really bad for you.
it's
Being
really not a good
resentful.
thing, no. I
No,
agree.
it just piles up. emotion. You're
But
better to sternly just say to somebody, you know, can you do a bit better, actually, because I don't think that's very fair. You're better to do that for all people involved, because they might so for example, I'll reframe this. Sometimes I find it difficult to keep on top of the housework. So years ago, when I used to share houses, like as a student and stuff like that, the pots would not bother me. Like it could fill the whole sink, and until I need that a spoon and there's none left, I'm not washing them. Whereas obviously other people's standards are different to mine. So they would like get annoyed when it was like just a few bits. And so they would wash it. So then they would be always the one washing it. So I'm there going, oh, well, they seem to be happy doing that, not thinking this isn't really fair, you know? And sometimes somebody has to say to you, like, you know, I'm always doing this. We're sharing this space and I need it to be this way. Can you put some effort in? And it's often a lack of communication that causes a problem there, isn't it?
it really is. Like I live with people as well, like, you know, and it got to the stage where you're holding in all that resentment, and it just eventually came out. It's like, will you just pick up the fucking plate off the ground? There was a young lad we were living with, and he'd get his dinner, then put the plate and the mug beside his chair in the sitting room. Then he'd go get more food. There was a whole kitchen sink full of food or plates beside his chair in the sitting room, and you're like, come on, man. I'm sorry. But yeah, so yeah, I understand what you.
Do you know one thing? So I lived in a shared house, and there was at one point, there was probably about 7 of us living in this house, a bit slummish back in the day, before I became a student. I was a bit of a dropout, and didn't really have any direction. And so there was lots of us anyway living in this house, and I'd like wait out, because whenever when you make a brew, everyone wants a brew, and you have to make like, yeah, it's like making a full order. So I'd hold out, but I used to be the one that would usually like be the one that would want the brew first, that would give in first. So that was the thing that I ended up doing, making rounds of brews for everybody, and other people would be the ones that did the washing up. But it wasn't, yeah, that used to really annoy me. So you'd like want to sneak off and just make yourself a brew, but you can't do that. So you have to take an order of like 7 brews to make instead of making one. Yeah. So I think when we're younger, we don't always pull our weight. We're very much in our own sort of
Exactly.
bubble, I think.
We call it maintainers over in Ireland. It means myself, like, but we yeah, like, you know, we just, when we're younger, we're unaware of, you know, we're just
You're
living, we're
learning to live with
surviving.
other people,
Yeah.
aren't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we're kind of surviving, and then we're triggered by their behavior, they're triggered by our behavior. And as we grow, we learn from our mistakes and we evolve into better human beings, and then we're aware of what not to do.
Yeah. Only if you can own it, though. That's another trigger of mine, actually. When people don't own it, when they want to blame someone else, that causes a rage
That
in me.
bugs me. That bugs me. We're humans. We make mistakes. Own that shit. I will go straight up to the person and say, hey, that was my fault. Show me what to do, how to do it better, or show me how to fix it. You know what I mean? I will never. Oh, yeah, that does trigger me. Why does it trigger? Like, that's a good question. Why are we triggered by dishonest people?
Yeah.
When, if, you know, oh, maybe because we might have been dishonest growing up or something. You know, maybe when I was a teenager, I went to third grade or something. Or, you know, as a child, actually, no, that's it. You know, when you're a child and you do something wrong, it's like, I didn't do that, it was your brother.
Yeah, no, but yeah, everyone being frightened to be the one that was blamed. I think there's a bit of I think that's a generational thing in my family, that people don't want to. My dad often go like, he will have the remote and he will put it down and he'll forget where he's put it, and then he will swear that somebody else has had it. and they won't have done it. He's just forgotten where he's put it. So I guess that's might be one of the reasons why it triggers me.
Yeah.
But I like this with the kids at school. I'm like, if you know me, you know that you take responsibility. I always say, you're not Pinocchio and they're not the puppet masters pulling your strings. Mistakes are how we learn, so we own the mistake, otherwise we can't learn from it. Yeah, but if I had a pound for every time I've had that conversation with children, I'd be very, very rich now.
That's a good analogy to use for kids as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, because that's like the way you teach children is brilliant because you're actually teaching them about their mindfulness and how to be aware. You know, that's really important.
Yeah, yeah. And they what happens often in classes is you say, you know, stop messing around or stop talking. They're like, oh, well, he was talking to me. And then, or they'll be like, oh, she's staring at me. I'm like, oh, okay. How do you know she's staring at you? Is it because you're looking at her as well? And they're like, oh, I just got it from the corner of my eye. I was like, well, why don't you make sure you're doing the right thing? Because if everybody makes sure they're doing the right thing, then the right thing happens everywhere. And if they're doing the wrong thing, they'll stand out. Yeah, because we get a lot of telltaling in classes, which also drives you mad.
Yeah,
Because
I think we all do that as children.
It's just as disruptive as the child that's tapping the table, you know. Miss, so-and-so's tapping the table. I know I can hear, but you're louder now, shouting across the class telling me that. Or you're like, a child puts their hand up and you're like, yes. And it's just to report on somebody that's annoying them. It's the amount of times it stops the learning. Yeah, I find that triggering. Yeah, so mind your own business. That's what I'm always saying. Mind your own business. Make sure you're doing the right thing. Don't worry about everybody else. So that's what we could take into adulthood. Just worry about what you're doing and not what everyone else is doing.
It takes us a long time to unlearn that behavior, really, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Yeah. I just think that I would have got on a lot better in life if I had learned that lesson that I'm in charge of my feelings, not other people.
That's it.
The blame game.
Yeah, we mentioned this before. Before we become aware, we blame everyone and everything else for our problems. We blame the world, we blame the traffic, we blame the person, we blame the saucepan, the frying pan, whatever. It's nothing to do with us, you know. And it's like, this is not my problem. I'm just angry at everything in the world because the world is against me. That's bullshit. Everything is your responsibility. The trigger is your responsibility. The trigger is your wound to heal. You know, and this is so important. Like, you know, and this is the thing within relationships as well. The miscommunication, the lack of communication. One person triggered and then goes into silent mode and then expects the other to read their minds. This is what leads to arguments in life. You know, people need to own their triggers, not blame the other person for the trigger, and sit with their shit. You know, say, hey, I'm being triggered right now. I know it's not your fault. Give me some time to understand what it is. Instead of being angry with the external person. Like,